Rank 1, nobody. They bring you in a windowless van and you hear the prison before you see it, the hum of voices behind a concrete wall like a machine in motion. 18 hours ago, you were sitting in the back of a truck loaded with sugarcane bales on the highway between Foz do Iguaçu and São Paulo, and at the federal checkpoint, they told you to get out. You're 26. You have a Colombian ID in the name of Diego Sepulveda Ramirez and 400 reais in your pocket, which they took during the search and didn't return. A guard leads you down a corridor, and at some point you pass through a grill behind which two inmates are standing. The guard nods to them. They nod back, and you realize you've just been handed over. One of the two takes you by the elbow, leads you up the stairs, and you see the entire block. A long hall with 4-tiered bunks on both sides, hammocks between the pillars, clotheslines with wet t-shirts, and people everywhere. The heat is stifling, and there are so many people that the air runs out somewhere around the second tier. They show you a spot on the floor beneath the lower bunks at the far end, between the wall and a bucket, which at night, when the block doors are locked, is used as a toilet. The first night you don't sleep because of the noise. 160 people in a space meant for 40 produce a constant, steady hum, snoring, muttering, coughing, the creaking of bunks, shuffling on the concrete. Toward morning, someone steps on your hand in the dark and you flinch, but you don't scream because in those first few hours you've already learned. People don't scream here if they want to make it through the night without drawing attention. On the second day, a man in his 40s approaches you. He has a short beard and a tattoo on his neck, a clock without hands. He asks where you're from and what you're in for. You answer. He nods and brings a plastic bowl with rice, beans, and a piece of chicken. You're so hungry you don't ask how much it costs, and only later do you learn that everything in the block costs money. Food, filtered water, a place to sleep, soap, even the right not to be touched. And the one who brought you the bowl has noted down the debt. During the first week, you try to figure out how the space is organized here. Your block is one of 8 in the building, and each has its own order, its own leaders, its own internal currency. Between the blocks are corridors controlled not by guards, but by inmates. The guards stay on the other side of the outer bars. They come in here only in the morning for a formal roll call and in the evening to lock the doors. The rest of the time, you live by the rules of the people sitting next to you. Rank 2, debtor. A week later, the man with the watch without hands comes back. His name is Renata, a nickname, not a name, the origin of which no one will explain to you. He says you owe him for food, for a place to stay, and for the first 7 days during which you were left alone. He doesn't name a sum. Instead, he says you need to take a package from your block to the block on the first floor. The package is fist-sized, wrapped in black plastic, and you don't ask what's inside. On the stairs, you pass 2 checkpoints. Not guards, but inmates standing at the intersections of the corridors, deciding who can pass. You give Renata's name, and they let you through. In the block on the first floor, they point to a person. You hand over the package, receive a smaller bundle, and carry it back. The whole operation takes 12 minutes, and when you return, Renata takes the bundle and says that today you ate for free. For the next 3 months, you're a courier. You carry packages, mop the floor in Renata's cell, wash her clothes, and stand guard by the stairs when told to. You learn the rules not by hearing them, but by watching. Everyone here knows the Brotherhood's code by heart. Don't steal from your own. Don't touch other men's women during visits. Don't snitch. Don't use the organization's name as a cover for personal business. There's one punishment for breaking the rules. It's not spoken aloud, but everyone has seen what it looks like. You see it for the first time in the 6th week. 2 men lead a 20-year-old guy out of the cell and take him to the shower room. He doesn't scream because he knows why they're taking him, and he walks on his own. Then one of the 2 returns and washes his hands at the sink next to your bunk. There's nothing on his hands, but he washes them for a long time. By evening, someone else has already taken the guy's bunk. His belongings, a bag of clothes and a radio, were taken by Renata. No one mentions his name, and you quickly realize that's how it's done here. After a sentence, a person doesn't just die, he ceases to exist in conversation. Rank 3, initiate. 5 months later, Renata says someone has vouched for you. You don't know who. They bring you to a cell on the upper tier, where 4 men are sitting and ask you questions. Do you know the rules? Are you willing to pay the monthly fee? Do you understand that there is no way out of the brotherhood? You say yes 3 times. One of the 4 hugs you and calls you Irman, brother. From that day on, you pay 25 reais a month, which you must earn inside or get from the outside. They start paying you for kitchen work. And it's not the prison administration that pays, but the brotherhood that controls the kitchen. In return, a bunk on the 2nd tier, 3 meals a day, and a guarantee. If someone from another group touches you, they'll stand up for you. But if it's one of your own, it means you broke the rule yourself, and no one will intervene. Over the next few months, you begin to understand how things work. The brotherhood operates like a state within a state, its own court, its own laws, its own fees, its own social protection. The prison administration exists somewhere on the other side of the bars, and nothing here depends on it. The guards get paid for looking the other way, the warden for not showing up. You get used to the routine, wake up, the kitchen, the yard, where 400 people are on a field half the size of a soccer field at the same time. Some play cards, some listen to the radio, some get tattoos with a machine made from a razor blade motor and a guitar string. At some point, you catch yourself forgetting what day of the week it is, and you realize that time here has long been measured differently. Visiting day, the day when a shipment arrives from the outside, the day when contributions are counted. In the kitchen, you work with a guy named Tiago, who's been serving time for murder for 11 years now. Tiago teaches you how to cook beans in an industrial pot that makes 400 servings, and in between tasks, he tells you how the hierarchy up top works, who the towers are, who the liaisons are, how information flows between the blocks. He doesn't recruit you or try to sway you. He just talks. And at some point you realize you know more about how the brotherhood works than a new recruit is supposed to. That means they're preparing you for something next. Rank 4, soldier. You get promoted after you beat someone up for the first time. They tell you that a guy from the neighboring block owes money and isn't paying, and you need to explain it to him. Explain means beating him up with your fists, so there are no marks left on his face. You do this in the hallway between the shower and the staircase. The guy goes down after the 4th punch, and you stand over him with trembling hands, though they're not trembling from fear but from adrenaline, and that feeling scares you more than anything that happened in the past year. Now you're a soldier, and the job is simple, keeping order in the block, making sure the rules are followed, debtors pay up, and conflicts don't spill out into the open. Because any chaos attracts the administration calls the state police, and the state police don't investigate. They come in with tear gas and batons and beat everyone indiscriminately. Your main job, essentially, is to make sure the police don't come. Over the course of a year, your body adapts. Push-ups and pull-ups every morning because everyone does it and because your body is the only thing you truly own here. A scar appears on your left forearm, a line from a sharpened spoon you didn't notice in the dining hall. Your bunkmate, a former nurse from Bahia, stitched it up with threads from an unstitched sheet, and it took 3 weeks to heal. You've learned to sleep through any level of noise, but to wake up at the slightest silence, because silence in a block of 160 people always means something's going on. One night, a fight breaks out in the neighboring block, which turns into a riot within 10 minutes. You hear screams, then a crash. Someone is breaking the bunks, and then the smell of tear gas. The state police have entered. You stand in your block behind a locked door and listen as they beat everyone in the next block, and through the barred window you see people being dragged by their feet across the yard. The next morning, everything is quiet in your block, and Renata says, "See, that's why we have order." Order is when they don't drag you by your feet. Rank 5, messenger. 2 years later, you're transferred to a different job, from manual labor to communications. Now you coordinate the transmission of messages between blocks, between the prison and the outside world, between the Brotherhood's leadership here and the leadership on the outside. You get a phone, a small device that they hide in places you'd rather not think about the moment they hand it to you. You charge it from a homemade outlet tapped into the hallway lighting wiring, and you call the numbers you keep in your head because you can't write them down. If they find a list during a search, everyone goes down. In this position, you learn things the soldiers don't know: who makes the decisions, where the money comes from, who gets paid on the outside, which judges have been bought off, and which lawyers you can turn to. You learn that the Brotherhood has long since expanded beyond the prison walls. On the outside, it controls neighborhoods, retail outlets, and routes stretching from the Bolivian border to the port of Santos. In this scheme, the prison is not a place of confinement, but a headquarters. You pass on your first serious order 3 weeks into your new assignment. A call from the outside, an unknown number. They dictate an address and a name to you. You memorize them, hang up, and a minute later relay the information to the tower in the neighboring block. You don't know what will happen at that address or to that person, but 2 days later, a news segment about a shooting in a suburb of São Paulo flashes across the TV screen in Renata's cell. You recognize the street name. Renata changes the channel. The danger of this situation is that you know too much. If the Brotherhood decides you're unreliable, they won't demote you or transfer you. They'll eliminate you, which is why you don't drink, don't talk, and don't get close to anyone. On visiting days, no one comes to see you just as before. It used to hurt, but now it's convenient. There are no people from the outside, no one to turn on you. Rank 6, the Tower. In your 4th year, you're made head of the block, which they call the Tower here. 600 people, and you're responsible for every single one of them. You assign sleeping quarters, settle disputes, and hand down sentences. 2 men come with a complaint. One says the other stole his phone, the other replies that the phone was payment for a debt. You listen to both, ask questions, and call in a 3rd man who witnessed it. Then you make a decision. One is led away and you know what will happen next, but you don't look. You no longer beat people yourself. There are soldiers for that. But every blow, every sentence, every body carried out of the shower in a sheet, that is your decision. Signed with a nod. One nod and the man you stood with in the yard yesterday is gone. Now you have a private cell. A 3x4 meter room with a bunk, a table, a working fan, and a curtain instead of a door. More personal space than you've had in your entire life in prison. They bring food from the outside, decent stuff. Grilled chicken, fruit, sometimes coffee in a thermos. You're living better than you did in Cali before you got into that truck. But you've stopped sleeping, and not because it's noisy. For the first time in 4 years, it's quiet around you. It's just that at this level, the threat comes from within the Brotherhood. Towers get taken down for political reasons. If someone at the top decides you're too independent, that your block isn't bringing in as much as it should, or that one of your soldiers has failed, you're the one who answers for it. And there's always only one answer here. In 8 months on the job, you lose 2 soldiers. The first one is taken away by the police at dawn, a separate warrant, a separate case. They load him into a van and take him to another prison, and there's nothing you can do. The second is killed in a fight with an inmate from another block, which starts over a card debt and ends with a sharpened piece of rebar. You bury both of them the same way. You send money to their families through a contact and pick replacements the next day. There's no time to grieve and no one to grieve for. You barely remember their faces anymore. Rank 7, Voice. In your 6th year, you're promoted another step up. Now you coordinate the entire prison. Communication between blocks, communication with the outside world, communication with the Brotherhood's leadership in other states. They call you the Voice because when you speak on behalf of the organization, and your word is an order to 2,000 people. You get a refrigerator, a TV, and a second phone for calls to the outside. You decide which lawyer will handle whose case, how much money will go to the families of the deceased, and who will be transferred to another block. The guards greet you by name, and the prison warden, through an assistant, lets you know when an inspection is scheduled so you have time to clear out the excess. Once a month, you hold a general meeting of the tower leaders. 7 people gather in your cell, and you assign tasks, listen to reports, and resolve conflicts between blocks. It's like a meeting of branch managers at a company, only instead of quarterly targets, the number of contributions, the number of sentences, and the number of phones confiscated during the last search, these are the numbers you need to meet. You lead these meetings calmly and methodically, and sometimes you catch yourself thinking that if someone recorded your voice and removed the context, it would sound like a regular work planning meeting. And then an order comes from above, from the leadership on the outside. Take out the man in the neighboring block. His name is Carlos. He's 32, and 4 years ago you yourself brought him in for his initiation, hugged him yourself and called him brother. He became a leader in his block, and someone decided he talks too much to people he shouldn't. Maybe it's true, maybe not. You nod. A day later, Carlos is gone, and they don't tell you the details and you don't ask. Your sentence ends in 2 years. You'll walk out the gates, get on a bus to Sao Paulo, and you can fly wherever you want. But membership in the Brotherhood is for life, and that's not just a figure of speech, but a clause in the charter, the very one you said yes to at the 3rd rank. You don't leave the Brotherhood. You're sitting in a cell with a fridge and 2 phones, and 600 people work for you, and on the outside, people are waiting for you who already know your name, and you realize that in 2 years, your body will walk out the gates, but you'll stay here.